Before we move on to the maturity model, Frank, this would be a good time if anybody had any questions about this part of the presentation, maybe we could field them now.
Excellent. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Nate. As a reminder, we have muted the phones, but if anyone has a question, you can submit it via the questions queue inside GoToWebinar, and we will handle those questions now. I think one question that I have, guys, from a perspective of the crawl, walk, run, you highlighted a couple areas where you've worked with customers that have not had a lot of successes in the past. Talk a little bit about some of those lack of successes, and you talked about some of the reasons why, but how much is it truly related to the software choice versus, again, thinking things out, the people side of it, the resource side of it, the approach side of it versus the tool itself? I think if I'm reading between the lines here correctly, a lot of what you've seen isn't related to what tool you're trying to use. It's related to all the other steps you've stubbed your toe on that aren't related to the software itself.
No, you're absolutely right, Frank. I mean, there are lots of good tools out there, and there are lots of tools that do different things, and some of them in combination do, you know, other functions. And the thing is that if you don't have a well-defined process, or you don't know questions you want to have answered, and you don't have a process for answering those questions, what ends up happening is that no matter what tool you buy, it may not be the appropriate tool to do the implementation. And again, if you don't know what your goal is, where you're trying to get to, then that's exactly what ends up happening. You end up failing in the BI project because you didn't really know what it was you wanted at the beginning, and just implementing a tool doesn't matter. It isn't going to make that for you. So if you bought, like buying dinnerware, I mean, you could buy pots and pans and bring them home, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the dinner is going to be cooked that you had imagined eating that night, right? Because there's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. And so you can buy the tools, and you can absolutely fail at doing the implementation if you haven't thought it out right. But what we've noticed with most of these companies, especially, you know, the big ones usually have teams of people that they can put on this. But with more mid-sized companies, these companies are not in the business of being BI companies or analytic companies. These companies are manufacturers who build bicycles, or they build a certain part, and that's what they do. BI is a necessity for them, and they usually don't have departments that are big enough to really have all the answers here. So they need trusted advisors to come in and help them through this entire process of doing a successful implementation and making sure that they are promoting the right tools to answer those business questions.
I think the other thing that I see, you know, I don't see any other questions in the queue here, so let me make one comment and we can move on to the second part of the presentation. Is a lot of companies fail to treat their BI project like the ERP project. They spend a lot of time planning it, getting executive commitment, putting a structure in place, a methodology, and yet BI is not approached that way, and yet ultimately, in a lot of cases, we listen to customers or users that will tell you the success of the ERP implementation revolves around the data that gets in the hands of the users and allows them to make critical decisions. It's not, does the system allow them to transact? Does the system allow them to ship? It's what data do we have to work with? And if you don't make the mistake of putting the right effort into the BI implementation and the right resources like you do your ERP project, then you should probably be more successful.
I concur with that statement. I mean, ERP is a repository of information. It's not until that data comes out and a person looks at it, interprets it, and determines what to do with it for their business that it has any value at all. So getting that data into the hands of the people in a format where they can make a business decision that proactively benefits your company, I mean, that's really the goal of BI. It's not just getting to the data. That's not the end game. That's the beginning of the game, is to hook up to the data.
Yeah, great. Excellent. Okay. Excellent. Steve, one other question in the queue. It's a question that really gets into the innards of cubes and integrated warehouses and hypercubes and the like, and reconciling across them. I think today we want to focus on just the approach and methodology, so maybe we can address that that other question at a later date. But
okay,
we'll move on to the second part of the presentation. I'll remind folks again, you can submit your questions virtually by using the question and answer queue inside GoToWebinar.
Thank you. So one of the things that we do is we've developed a Halo Business Intelligence Maturity Model that we use with our customers to kind of assess where they are in terms of BI maturity. And this is different than some of the other maturity models that you may have seen, because what we're focused on here really are 4 different dimensions of sophistication of information that you need in order to really have a mature BI rollout. And so we look at this on a continuum from having less BI value to having more BI value, and we assign points to the hold on a second. Can you give us control back?
Yeah, I never took control back from you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still showing as presenter.
Got it. Okay. So you see the points on the bottom there? So
yep.
As we move through these boxes, what ends up happening is that we're going to assign these points, okay? And the reason the points are the way they are is that it becomes exponentially more difficult as you move out to the right to do the implementation, but it also has exponentially more business value if you can get out there, okay? The first dimension that we look at is data, and we look at this on a continuum of structured to unstructured. And if you look down at the very fundamental areas of data, you're looking at a single source. So this could be an ERP, it could be your CRM system, it could be Excel files. It's wherever a customer would be storing data. And there's value in that information, but it has the least amount of value in terms of data. Above that is when you have multi-source data that you can use. Because single source data usually allows you to answer very specific questions. If you're looking at multi-sources of data within your BI system, what ends up happening is that you can answer a lot more questions because you can cross multiple databases. More sophisticated than that is data cleansing. We know that 30 to 50% of the data in data warehouses are usually wrong or have some type of inconsistencies. If you're making business decisions on just the raw data that's in the system, you're going to be making bad decisions. And so data cleansing would be the next aspect of data on this continuum. Following that is real-time data. So this is information that would allow us to see what's going on right now. And then, of course, big data, which everybody talks about, and being able to really use the unstructured data to drive business decisions. Next level up is application, and we look at this from from historic to future in terms of what you can do with the data. So reporting is really talking about looking at historic information. So there are a lot of systems out there where you can just, link a reporting package to a single source of data, and you can look at the information as to what happened last quarter, last year, whatever. And that's a great thing. You need that for financials. You need that to understand where you were. But really, that's just giving you the raw numbers that are in your database. Above that would be analysis and the ability to drill into the information and try to understand why certain things happened the way they did. So if we didn't close Q2 very well, I want to understand why. Is it a regional problem? Was it a problem with a specific item that I was carrying on my shelves? Was I late with something? Okay, so analysis is more sophisticated than reporting. And above that, we have monitoring. But reporting and analysis really looks, again, it's at the historical data. We're looking into the past. With monitoring, this is where we start to look at today what's happening. So if I can actually see what's happening right now, I have a better chance of making a business decision that impacts my business. I can't really change anything that I get from reporting and analysis. It is the way it is. Monitoring is the first point where I can start to look to make a business impact. Above that, we have regression analysis and predictive analytics. And when you start to add these types of analytics, what it does is it allows you to look forward rather than backward in time. And when you start to be able to use the data to look into the future, you can start to take actions today that impact what your budgetary numbers are going to be in the future and what your profits are going to be in the future. And that's why companies that enjoy those 40 and 50% increases in profit, the ones that are 4 times the average, it's because they're looking through the windshield of the car rather than looking in the rear view mirror by just looking at what happened last quarter. The next continuum we look at is collaboration, and this talks about people sharing that data. When I talked about the 10 million questions that really are what a business is, it's a collection of those. How do those people actually collaborate on this information that is out there? If you have simply individuals who are looking at a specific report, that's empowering them to make better business decisions for their specific role. And that was that person who spends a third of their time looking for this data. But there's also above that is ad hoc collaboration, where I would call a group of people together, for instance, to sit down and start to understand some numbers. So I might run a report and sit down, and now we start to talk about, hey, I just ran this report, and I see some anomalies in the data. Let's talk about it. So these are very unstructured meetings, and really the analysis is unstructured. Above that, as you become more mature, you would do something like scheduled email, okay, where if there is a report that everybody has agreed on, or metrics that everybody's agreed on, those are pushed out on a very regular basis so that you can always be making sure that your business is running according to those metrics. Above that, and more mature, would be alerting, and alerts would allow you to know when something hits a threshold, if inventory levels fall to a certain point, if the supply is or the shipments that you're making are late or whatever. If you're getting these alerts, you can take action today that's going to impact your numbers tomorrow. And that's really the key with BI, is helping to empower people to make decisions in the future, help them use the past data to impact what's going to happen. And the most mature type of collaboration would be integrated collaboration, where it was built into the tool. So you can take all of that knowledge that's gained by answering all of these questions as to what could be going wrong within the system and fixing it, and then being able to take that information and memorialize it in a way where people can learn from it. And when key people within the organization leave or move on into other positions, that data is not lost. That information is not lost. Above that, we have distribution. And this is on a continuum from silo to kind of the ecosystem. At the bottom end, you have single users. And this is what happens a lot of times with immature implementations, is that you have this single source of data, you're getting reports, and there are individuals looking at it, and it's really just a user here, a user there who's looking at that data, but it's not tied into the entire business infrastructure. More mature than that is when data can be pushed out to departments, so that the sales department, the finance department, procurement can start using the information to make better business decisions. More mature than that is when the entire enterprise is looking at this. So people within, not just various departments, people within the organization are tied to each other, so that the people in customer service are tied to the people in sales, so that they can start to answer questions about certain products and what's selling, and how do we best support these particular customers, and what did you promise them. And so the enterprise is using all of this data to be able to make better business decisions. And even mature than that is when you can empower your supply chain with those numbers. So if you think about it, most companies are looking at BI as an internal implementation. It's like, I need to get this data to the people within my company. But the truth is that your entire business ecosystem needs that data. Your business cannot function without all of the suppliers and all of the vendors and all the customers and all the interrelationships that happen between all these different entities. So being able to empower the supply chain with the right information is also very much ingrained in what BI should be, and this is where BI is going. And so if I can empower my suppliers with certain numbers, like the amount of stock that I need on each one of my shelves, I can now use that as a metric and hold them to that, and they can do a better job of making sure that I'm stocked at the right levels within all my stores at the right time. And finally, being able to empower my customers to see the information that I have within my database about them, so that they can make better informed decisions on how they spend money with me, and also hopefully spend more money with me. This is where eventually you want to be in terms of maturity, in terms of deployment of the business information. So when we go in and we assess a company, it may look like something like this. So They have a single source of data. They have reporting. They're doing some analytics. They have individuals who are looking at the reports. Maybe they're doing some ad hoc meetings on top of that. They've got scheduled emails going out, and they've got single users using it, and they've also got departments who are empowered to use some of the data. So a company like this, we would say, has a business maturity score of 14. Okay, and this is probably a pretty typical customer that you might be engaged with. They've done something with BI, and this is probably something that it looks like. I'd now like to hand it back over to Nate Weaver to show you how to move people along this continuum and get them to be more mature in their score.
Thank you, Ray. So with a BI maturity score of 14, of course, your AX implementation, you're going to have reporting. Now, for the finance department, this could be simple income statement, balance sheet, reporting. It's very static information, although it could be pushed out and automated through a scheduled email basis. Maybe every Monday morning at 8 a.m., the finance department wants this same book of reports. I would say that most BI tools today, or AX, is already a mature or Microsoft environment that also fits well into the underlying tools like Excel and SharePoint. And then, as you guys already know, in the role center of AX, you can have certain dashboards up and running very quickly, or as you see in the screenshot, you can also have an analytics platform that sits on top of what would potentially be AX and maybe Excel through different data sources. So here's where we start to push the maturity score up. What about all that bad data that's being entered into AX? So we've got two fundamental problems here that I see from our customers before we roll through a successful implementation all the time. You've got end users that are out in the field. Maybe they're logging into AX and they're entering information. So AX is great as an ERP platform for data entry and validation of numbers. I, as a sales rep, could go into AX and I could run a quick report and I could see what my numbers are that I've entered. If I'm not monitoring that very closely and business processes aren't set the way that they should be during an ERP implementation, then you have the potential for end users to enter bad information, such as open text fields where I can go in and just enter the misspelling. As you see on the screenshot today, we've got 4 misspellings of the word Bellevue City right outside of Seattle. This is actually a customer's data that allowed me to show this. So data quality approach could be everything from as simple as address correction all the way down the line to utilizing the newer features maybe in Microsoft, such as MDS or DQS, all the way up to a master data management level. So they approached us with, our reporting's all over the place. Our employees are consistently entering bad information. When they go to run a report, they're not getting a single version of the truth because they're running a report that would potentially have the correct spelling of Bellevue, but they're leaving out the other 3 that were misspelled because they're not thinking to pull that in. There's just too many variables that they can't think about when trying to run a report out of AX. So having a system that can automate this data quality initiative and help to surface and correct the accurate information in a BI tool is critical. The next is big data. Now let's just talk about big data in a context of data from anywhere. So not only are we pulling all that information from AX, and I'll talk about a few of the connectors that need to be able to handle these particular ERP, CRMs, or data sources specifically. So an AX connector obviously would have all the correct connections to the database that will be able to pull enums and friendly names or labels all the way down to table references, so hitting the AOT layer. Moving into, well, maybe we have other data sources like one of our case studies earlier. Not only do we have AX, we have a budgeting and planning system. We have ADP for payroll. We have a SaaS model of CRM that hush-hush may not be Microsoft. So let's say we have a few other non-SQL databases. Well, your end users still need to be able to connect to all of that data to be able to ask and answer their own questions without coming back to the IT department to run yet another report. So having a very mature BI software platform or solution that can handle data from anywhere, I would say is very, very critical as well. Now, when we move into real-time and monitoring, as Ray was just mentioning, I'm just going to talk about another one of our customers that I've been interacting with lately that has a great story to tell. They're a manufacturing and distribution company, kind of an old school kind of company, in an industry that lends itself to production line managers walking around with clipboards just trying to keep up with operations. So their biggest problem is monitoring when they have issues or problems within their production line. So after a successful implementation, we were able to help them now see real-time dashboards that monitor each individual production line down to the minute, so that when the production line goes down, we're able to enable those decision makers to optimize performance and increase efficiency of that production line. Now, also a mature BI initiative should be able to incorporate with the multiple sources of data that your end users interact with every day. So not only being able to pull information from those disparate sources of data, be able to put it into a data warehouse that is a collection of information to then use for reporting and analytics, it also needs to lend itself to fitting in to all of those systems that they're inputting data with that impact their daily lives. So having dynamic links from the BI initiative, BI dashboard, that goes back into the source system for an individual record. So let's say within Dynamic CRM, having a dynamic link that will open that account just by the click of a button after looking at analytics. Also being able to fit into a role center or the enterprise portal within AX, as you're seeing on the screen now, being able to drop in as a web part into SharePoint. And again, being able to fit into that business ecosystem that your end users are already using without having to learn a whole nother tool set that they then have to worry about logging into 4 different systems just to get the information they need. For a distribution model, this is a perfect screenshot of a supply chain management dashboard or a supplier scorecard where your customers can actually manage one customer cube, if you will. One database that has all the customer supplier scorecards, but then having a portal to allow each of those suppliers to log in, and as you see in the screenshot here with Snyder's Manufacturing, to only see their score. Only see what information or inventory they're pushing in 2, 4, 6 weeks early, 2, 4, 6 weeks late, and also how we are keeping score as a company about them as a supplier. So this is a great way of sharing information outside of the enterprise, but of course you don't want to put your individual suppliers into your Active Directory and monitor their security on a daily basis or have all that information enter in. You can have that authenticated automatically where they can delegate security from their parent level down. So as you by now notice, the score is going up with each feature that gets added within the BI initiative. Now we're moving to a very high score. We're now going to allow our customers to log in, and I'm going to tell just yet another story. One of our customers is a major airline, and with a major airline, they have customers from a unique individual all the way to a team or a company that has a budget. So let's say it spans everything from a rugby team that's fairly small but has a good budget, all the way up to a Formula One team that has an enormous budget. They use all of their travel budget on this one particular airline. So the airline's tracking individual customers, but what they wanted to do was, again, to have this portal to allow their individual customers or teams or groups to log in and actually see, well, when is the best time to buy airline? What's the budget that I have left sitting in my queue? What day of the week should I be booking? And based off of my history or maybe the history of other customers, whatever we choose to push out, to see, well, this is when other people are buying airline and getting the best prices. So this initiative can span everything from cross-sell analysis to what we call market basket, to see, well, on my invoice, I bought these products. What are other people buying? Just like you see, maybe if you log on to Amazon and you're doing a bit of shopping, and you can see, well, we also recommend, based off of your purchase, you may be interested in these other items that are also on sale. So be able to take the business intelligence model and push that out to external users outside of the organization in a very secure environment. Okay, so as we all know, we've heard about collaboration for well over a year now. This is a very big push in the BI industry. A successful collaboration tool should not only just allow people to log in and speak to each other, maybe like Yammer does, but it needs to be attached to the metrics that you're driving your decisions on. So within, as an example, our collaboration tool, it's attached to each individual dashboard where individual users can go in, they can track performance, they can communicate about why business is trending up or what areas of the business need a little bit of work, which customers are not doing as well as they were last year, but also being able to break down those barriers in between the silos of business where now you're enabling end users in the marketing department to communicate with the sales department. The sales guys can now communicate with maybe the inventory information so that they can see, well, if we do this push initiated by a campaign from the marketing department, I can sell it at a discounted rate. Is it sitting in inventory available for my customers to have if they need it in 3 or 4 days? So again, as Ray mentioned earlier, being able to memorialize the data and then be able to track performance gains or losses based off of those decisions that we're making is what makes up a true collaboration tool within a BI initiative. One of the biggest issues that I've learned over my career is that you can do historical analysis out of AX, you can run reports, you can attach dashboards to that, but one thing that I'm consistently going to be asked as a manager or as a business analyst is, okay, well, based off of what we're doing today, can you kind of give me an idea of where we're going to be, next month? So as Ray mentioned, some great use cases. Well, based off of the pipeline that we're building right now, we have this amount of leads. Based off of our conversion, we know that that's going to turn into this number for Q4. What you're looking at on the screen now is a true predictive environment building off of not only the predictive models that are embedded into a SQL environment, but also being able to incorporate business predictive models that your customers may be doing in R or some of the other predictive models or SAS, and being able to incorporate that into the BI initiative. So a quick example from one of our customers, what you're seeing on the screen is for each individual product, we're seeing historicals all the way through August of this year. Well, how are we going to do 3 months into the future? And then we've actually applied our model to 1 month of historicals versus predictive to see how closely we have matched, to see how well our predictive model is doing. So again, not only being able to report off of historicals, but pushing into the future, being able to do regression and predictive analysis as to how are we going to end the year. This is back to you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ray.
So just to wrap it up, as we are at the top of the hour, our contention is that a business is really a collection of decisions, and it's empowered by human intelligence. And the BI projects fail because of communication issues and the ability of people to actually share insights that they've made in that data. And being able to successfully do BI implementations are based on the decision makers being at the center of the process and giving them the tools that they need, giving them the right platform and the right processes to allow them to collaborate. And finally, to have an end-to-end solution that allows users to ubiquitously go through all the different types of data that Nate talked about and all the different types of analytics, and be able to do that in one environment so that they're not constantly switching between lots of different packages and getting different information. And essentially, using a unified package like this, you'd end up with one version of the truth. And with that, what we would like to do is, as an attendee of this webinar, we would like to offer you a copy of our Business Intelligence Maturity Model questionnaire if you would like to use that with some of your prospects or some of your customers so that you can assess their business maturity right now, their BI maturity, and then you can work at helping them become more mature with their BI implementation. So if you would like that, if you could just type the word tool into the chat window, we'll make sure that we get you a copy of that survey. So with that, Frank, I think I'm going to hand it back over to you for questions.
Great. Yeah, and I see several folks that are typing tool into the questions queue as well. That's fine. The questions queue or the chat window, either is fine to request this tool. And again, if you're typing into the questions queue, that tells me you know how to ask a question. So I'll remind everybody again that we're going to wrap up here with some question answers. I had a couple questions come through during the presentation that were specific to the Halo BI product. Want to know how many ERP packages you support, wanted to know how you integrate with this or that. I want to remind folks, I probably should have reiterated this at the beginning, that today's AXPC webinar was designed as a presentation around implementing BI and a crawl, walk, run approach that the audience can learn from and apply to their partner, as a partner to their customers. It was not meant to be, nor is it intended to be, nor is it a presentation about the Halo BI product and suite of products they offer. Some of the examples that were shown were purposely shown as examples to prove a point. We went through some of the planning of this of the presentation and specifically made sure we covered that. So if you do have a specific question about Halo BI, I'm sure Ray and Nate and the rest of the team would love to talk to you. They have their contact information was on the one slide. Feel free to, but we're not going to address specific questions about their product today. That's not the purpose of today's webinar. So one question did come up, and this is one that would work on the crawl, walk, run, I think, and it would apply not just to Halo but several other products out there. Talking about the use of business cubes and data marts around the concept of quicker implementations, and you guys showed the project plan and showed some examples of how one way to sort of get higher on your capability maturities model or is to actually do some things differently, and speed implementation might be one to allow you to get the data faster. Any thoughts on that, specifically not related to your product, but in general, the use of technology, whether it's cubes and data marts, something that's done to speed up the implementation? Does that usually help or hurt when it comes to the end game of how successful is a company with implementing BI? There's a lot of things that can be done to speed up the implementation, but I know from my perspective, sometimes you can go too fast and then the users aren't prepared for what they might have. But any thoughts about using some of those tools that might make for a quicker implementation? Is the payback there, or do you have to manage other risks associated with that?
Well, I would say, as a former BI project manager, I've lived through the environment, standard Microsoft environment of having all of the staff that Ray mentioned earlier. So a very expensive IT department that's using a waterfall methodology to take months to build out what they think is becoming a mature BI initiative. And managing that project, I got to see progress, but business users did not until it was ready to be delivered to them. So by using a rapid development or deployment environment, you can actually get a cube or a subject area, let's say like a sales and revenue cube, up and running in a matter of a couple of days, push it into a front end where you can start to QA all of the numbers, validate that it's all accurate, validate that the correct dimensions are there and attributes, correct hierarchies of a drill path before you push it to production. So again, based off of a rapid development environment, sure, I think it's absolutely a best practice to be able to do these by subject area. But then the key is having a solution that those individual cubes can interact with each other to follow a story through the complete BI initiative, as I mentioned earlier. So sure, maybe you have a marketing cube and a sales and revenue cube and an inventory cube and then maybe an AR or AP cube that actually can work with each other on a front end, so that when you select a customer, you can see which campaign they came from, which sales reps or sales rep is attached, which products they're purchasing, all the way down to their records of their account and the AR and AP cube to follow that full story. But that only works if you do a rapid development implementation. Otherwise, it would have taken months to get this up and running. And because it takes so long, by the time it's ready to be deployed, well, the business has changed. Requirements have changed, and end users now have different questions. So I think a rapid deployment environment lends itself to building out individual subject areas very well.
Excellent. Great. Okay. Let's see if there's some other questions out there. Remind you again, you can type into the queue. I'll throw another one out there, gentlemen, and this gets back to some of the stuff I was talking before about looking at your BI project as almost an ERP project. Traditionally, where are you, for the folks that are most successful at crawl, walk, run, and implementing BI, who is actually owning the BI project? Is it owned on the IT or technical side? Is it owned on the executive side? Is it owned on the finance side? For the projects that have been successful in following some of these steps you've outlined today, where is the project ownership falling?
I think we both have a comment on that. I think it goes without saying that without executive sponsorship of a BI project, it is most likely that it will fail because it's very difficult to push this uphill. Those implementations where we have CEO, CIO, CTO, CFO buy-in, and they're the ones who are driving the metrics because they're the ones who understand what the business needs to measure in terms of, in order for it to be successful. If it's pushed from that level down, you have a much better chance of it being successful. IT obviously owns the technology, but it's a collaborative effort between the business and the technologist that's going to give you a successful implementation of BI. You have to understand who the customer-supplier relationship is within a company, and IT is really they're the supplier and the business is the customer of the BI system. And so if you look at it that way, if it's executive sponsorship and IT is looking to their customers, which is the business, you'll have a successful implementation. If IT looks at this as a piece of software that needs to be implemented and we will essentially roll it out or force it upon the end users, it is very highly likely that that will fail.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on that? Okay. Good. Okay. All righty. I do not see any other questions in the question queue, nor do I see anything else in the chat window. I'll remind you again, if you do want to have access to the maturity model tool that Nate and Ray shared, feel free to type in the word tool into the questions or chat queue. We'll make sure that we pass it on to you accordingly. Give it one last chance for questions here. All righty, well, let's go ahead and wrap up today's AXPC webinar. I want to thank Ray and Nate for taking time out of their schedules to join us today to share this information. Hopefully all the partners on the line got a lot of value out of what was covered today. I know certainly BI can be challenging, and especially when it's added to a normal ERP implementation. So hopefully everyone gleans some additional information that will make it easier to help their customers when it comes to taking on BI and crawling first, walking, and then ultimately running and getting to the point there where you can be with some of those really high numbers you saw in their maturity model. I'll remind you of any specific follow-up questions for the team from Halo BI. You see their contact information there on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out to them directly. A couple other quick reminders from an AXPC perspective. I do want to remind you about some upcoming events on the AXPC calendar. As always, the best way to keep track of what's going on inside the AXPC is out at the website at axpartnerconnections.com. That's where you can go to see all the latest webinars. I'll remind you, as I mentioned at the beginning, about our big conference coming up that's taking place in Tampa down in October, the Partner Connections event. And then in general, the X Partner Connections group is built around building a community around readiness. So I always like to challenge our partners as we wrap up these calls to make sure you stay active in the community, the user community, the partner community, the Microsoft community. Stay active. Continue to develop your competencies. BI is one of many competencies that partners need to have in their toolkit, if you will, to be successful, to work and help your customers out in the Dynamics AX space. And then finally, serve as an advocate for your customers and for Microsoft Dynamics AX in general. Hopefully every day, each of us in the partner world are thinking about these three things, because if we do, it'll allow us to continue to build a community around readiness and allow the product to be more successful, allow our customers to be more successful, allow our partner companies to be more successful. So with that, we will go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thanks again to Ray and Nate for your time. I will remind everyone as well that today's slides and the recording will be posted down on the website at axpartnerconnections.com. Click on the webinars link and you can find the slide deck and recording within the week. We also have a couple more events we're putting on the schedule for later in the year after the event in Tampa. But again, if you're interested in the Tampa event, do go to the Partner Connections website and click on the link there to find out more about the Partner Connections event taking place in Tampa, Sunday, October 20th through Tuesday the 22nd. Of course, that's right before the ACSUG Summit taking place in Tampa, the 22nd through 25th. Summit currently has 640 people registered, well on track to have over 1,000, probably 1,100, at which point we'll hit a sellout situation. So if you're not registered for Summit as well, I want to encourage you to think about that being another opportunity for you to be active in the community and help with readiness and gaining knowledge to help your individual consultants and your company in general do more with AX to help out your customers. So we'll wrap it up for now. Thanks again, everyone, for your time, and we look forward to speaking to you soon on an upcoming webinar. Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Nate, and the team at Halo. Great job. I'll forward you on the folks who requested the tool, and we'll take care of that offline.
Okay. Thank you as well.
Thanks, folks. Oh, anytime. Thank you.